Hi, my name is Catherine Crace. I'm a lawyer, social worker, and expert on the reporting of suspected child abuse and maltreatment. I've trained thousands of professionals on their obligations as mandated reporters of suspected child abuse. There are some situations where it's obvious that a child is being maltreated, like child sexual abuse, and immediate intervention is necessary. There are some situations, however, where two professionals with very similar professional and training and experience will not see eye to eye on whether the case rises to the definition of abuse and or whether a government intervention is necessary. Many such situations relate to the use of corporal punishment. What is corporal punishment? Corporal punishment involves the deliberate infliction of pain intended to discipline a wrongdoer or reform their behavior. Spanking is a pretty common form of corporal punishment, but corporal punishment can also include pinching, slapping, paddling, and hitting someone with a strap or a belt. Even washing someone's mouth out with soap is a form of corporal punishment. Also, making someone stand or sit in an uncomfortable position or tight location for a period of time, or withholding foods or liquids, or denying them access to the bathroom. These are all forms of corporal punishment. The use of corporal punishment against a child is legal for parents in all 50 states in the United States of America. In fact, corporal punishment, usually in the form of paddling, is actually still allowed in some schools in 19 of the US states. An international movement centered on the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights has resulted in the outlawing of the use of corporal punishment against children at school and in their homes in about 63 different countries. So, when is corporal punishment child abuse? Whether or not you've been subject to corporal punishment yourself, you might have particular feelings about whether such a form of discipline is appropriate or not. Research on the use of corporal punishment generally and consistently shows it's ineffective as a form of actually reforming behavior. Additionally, there are decades of research that show a correlation between the use of corporal punishment and actually increased behavior problems for kids, as well as negative mental health outcomes. But regardless of what the research says, the law in the United States currently supports parents' rights to use corporal punishment, at least in limited forms. So, when is corporal punishment child abuse? The law in all 50 states clearly defines child abuse as when a child has been injured by a parent's intentional or otherwise non-accidental actions. When corporal punishment causes injury, including bruising, swelling, scratches, or cuts, that's child abuse. When corporal punishment causes substantial risk of injury, like when a child's hit with a dangerous implement or hit on the face, it's generally also considered child physical abuse. When the use of corporal punishment causes mental or emotional harm to a child, this might be considered physical abuse or child neglect. But such cases are harder to substantiate since there might be many reasons a child suffers mental or emotional harm that have nothing to do with the use of corporal punishment. So why don't we all agree? Well, with cases of child sexual abuse, there's a pretty universal understanding of wrongdoing by parents and caretakers. But the use of corporal punishment isn't so clear-cut. Centuries of legislation and case law have squarely provided parents with considerable breadth in their rights to raise their children. Parents have the right to determine what their kids eat, what clothes they wear. Parents have the right to determine their children's education and their medical care, with limited exceptions. The right to use corporal punishment has even been the subject of a famous United States Supreme Court decision. In Ingraham versus Wright, 9 male justices of the United States Supreme Court decided that the use of corporal punishment in schools was constitutional. And the decision wasn't decided in the 1800s. The decision was decided in 1977. So here in 2022, we have more recent research that shows there's still pretty much a lot of support for corporal punishment. In 2021, an American family survey found that half of men, about 54%, agree that spanking might sometimes be necessary, while only 42% of women felt the same way. Black and Hispanic respondents to the survey were more likely than white respondents to agree that spanking might sometimes be necessary. Liberal respondents were less likely than conservative respondents to agree that spanking might be necessary. And the more years of formal education a respondent had, the less likely they were to agree that spanking might sometimes be necessary. And respondents who regularly attend religious services were most likely to agree that spanking might sometimes be necessary. So, as mandated reporters, how do we take this information and use it? For the time being, the decision to report corporal punishment to Child Protective Services needs to be rooted in current law. Parents have the right to use corporal punishment as a form of discipline with their children, as long as they don't step over the line into excessive or abusive behavior. As a professional reporter, if you're uncomfortable with the use of corporal punishment, there are other things you can do. You can familiarize yourself with resources that help educate about the negative impacts of corporal punishment, as well as the options for other forms of discipline. This way, with the resources in hand, you can have fruitful, even if difficult, conversations with parents about the other options for disciplining their children besides corporal punishment. If you want to find more resources for mandated reporters, you can check out our website at www.makingthetoughcall.info.